over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff going on over there right now with our very talented cast of writers. We've got previews up for all of the remaining bowl games for you to check out. So definitely a whole lot going on with those. Those run all the way through the national championship game on January 13th. So I have a preview up of the national championship game once we know the winners of the two semifinals there on Saturday. NHL returns tomorrow, so NHL returns today, I should say. So Parker Michaels back with us there, taking a look at a very big card on the ice. Daily NBA and college basketball stuff as well. And of course, we'll have plenty of NFL content for you this weekend. And as we go throughout the NFL playoffs here, we'll keep doing the opening line report, keep taking a look at the market watch. We'll have a bunch of prop betting stuff once the Super Bowl rolls around. So plenty of things going on over at the website for you to check out. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Before I launch into the Week 17 Super Contest segment, quick programming note here. We'll be on the show Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday next week. No show on Wednesday with the New Year's Day holiday. Enjoy the bowl games there on Wednesday, but we should do 4 shows for next week. And for those that are new to the program, we do 5 days a week up through the college basketball national championship game for March Madness, except for that first week of March Madness where you've got Thursday, Friday, games all day. We cram everything in the first 3 shows there. So still a lot of Bang the Book Radio coming your way here as we go throughout the basketball and the hockey seasons. And of course, the Super Bowl taking us on into February with the NFL. So we'll get NFL thoughts from all of our guests for the playoff games, get different opinions, different viewpoints on those. So we're not going anywhere, even though college football winding down here. We'll still have a lot to talk about as we get through the NCAA tournament. And once we get on into the spring, on into the baseball season, I'll be doing my twice-a-week Bettor's Box podcast. I will also be doing some stuff for golf majors, big horse racing events, the NFL draft, some different stuff like that, season win totals. So we'll still try to get some of those shows on as we go throughout the spring and summer months as well. All right, so we go into the Week 17 Westgate SuperContest selection segment here. Disappointing last week, 1-4 for me, the only winner coming with the Kansas City Chiefs there. 38-40-2 now on the season. Obviously not at all where I want to be, but it's been a difficult year in the NFL, difficult to predict all the turnover margin stuff, and of course some of the bad coaching decisions, weird officiating, but you know what? Got to be better than that, and hopefully we'll be better than that for the 2020 season. As far as the other entry, the .com entry, 3-2 last week, now 42-36-2 for the season. Last week, the field actually came in with its 4th best week of the season, 54.94%. The field on the season now, 49.89%. It Ain't Breezy leads the field by 1.5 points. We've got a couple of entries tied at 10-0 for the mini contest. So still plenty of payouts, plenty of things left to be decided here in the Super Contest for 2019. Over in the gold, the winner-take-all contest, 48.71% last week, 50.43% for the season. So big week in the traditional Super Contest, awful week in the Super Contest Gold. A few things about that. First of all, in a winner-take-all contest, obviously you have to be a little bit more aggressive with your picks. Try to gain as much ground as you possibly can. So that was part of it. But also the public hammered the sports books last week, in particular in the early games. And really overall, it's been a pretty good football season in the NFL and college for a lot of those public sides. Some pretty low hold percentages all over Vegas and the other states that have legalized sports betting, some lower hold percentages than you would expect as well. So been a tough week for contrarian, or a tough year, I should say, for some contrarian handicappers, for some of those that try to fade the public a little bit in the NFL. Hasn't gone overly well. That's not my strategy necessarily, but it is something I do kind of factor into account a little bit. But, it's been a pretty good NFL and college football season for a lot of the recreational bettors out there. And, with legalization sweeping across the country, it should just mean, continued increasing revenues for those sports, increasing handles. Should be a lot of fun to see how all of that progresses into 2020. Consensus now in the Super Contest, 109, 119, and 7. The top 5 consensus, 41, 36, and 3 on the season. Over in the gold, the consensus, 113, 107, and 5. Top 5 consensus, 41, 40, and 3, with all the different ties and whatnot that we had earlier on in the season. Matching pick counts for the 5th most popular side, stuff like that. So the consensus, doing okay, not earth-shattering by any means, at least as far as the top 5 goes. The consensus in the Super Contest on the minus side, and will close that way, barring some sort of absolutely absurd week in Week 17. Over in the Circa Million, my entry also went 1-4 over there, 37, 41, and 2 on the season. The Dash 1 entry over in the Circa, 3-2 last week, now 44, 33, and 3. That would be just outside the money. That would be a point off the money in the Super Contest, but over in the Circa Million, unfortunately, only the top 10 plus ties get paid, whereas over in the Super Contest, the top 100 plus ties. And as I've talked about here recently on the segments as we finish out this NFL regular season, I would expect some changes to come to the Circa Contest for next year, much more popular than they expected it to be. You've got the new Circa property itself opening December 2020. So I would expect some changes coming from that contest to make it a little bit more attractive to a lot of people out there. Again, 1875 in the Circa, 3328 in the Super Contest. I would think that gap is lessened considerably for next season. So that should be rather interesting to see what sorts of changes come to the Circa. As I've talked about before, I would love to see a college football-esque Super Contest. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if the Circa would get involved in something like that, but it certainly would be nice to see one of those. Not that it was a great college football season for me, just a pretty average one, but still would be nice to have some kind of competition out there and something a little bit different to talk about with the college games. In any event, last week, the Circa field 55.13%, 50.52% for the season. So once again, as I mentioned, that Circa field with the expectation of an overlay on the prize pool, a little bit sharper than the Super Contest field, and obviously, too, about 1,450 fewer entrants. And, generally speaking, if you've got a little bit sharper of a crowd, that win percentage should wind up looking a lot better in the Circa. But again, nice to be part of the Circa. It's been great to chat about this with you here so far this season. Hopefully, I could finish on a high note, but congratulations to those that have maybe won their personal pools with friends or their contests or something like that. And of course, congratulations to those that are in the money when all is said and done after next week's set of games. As always, we take a look at the line differences between the two contests here, the Super Contest and the Circa Million. Vikings -1 in the Super Contest, 1.5 in the Circa. Cowboys -11 in the Super Contest, 10.5 over in the Circa. Steelers -2 in the Super Contest, -1.5 in the Circa. Patriots -16 at the Westgate, 15.5 in the Circa. Chiefs -8.5 in the Super Contest, 8 in the Circa. Rams -3.5 in the Super Contest, the flat 3 over in the Circa. And the Broncos -3 in the Super Contest, -3.5 in the Circa. So a lot of half-point line differences out there for this week. But again, you talk about trying to make up ground. Difference between 3 and 3.5, pretty significant. 2 and 1.5 could be significant. 1 and 1.5 could be significant. So, again, you try to avoid those flat numbers if you're trying to make up some ground there. If you're trying to hold your positions, maybe those flat numbers not as bad for you. So, again, the same things in play here for this week in terms of, if you're trying to make up ground, look to avoid pushes. You got better chances with the risk reward of a full point as opposed to a half point. And if you're looking to kind of maintain where you are, well, then you got some more to think about here for this week in your contests. But overall, obviously week 17 is very difficult. You've got differing motivations for these teams. You've got some teams that maybe have a little bit of a mandate to the coaches to, not try too hard to win this week. You got players resting. You've got playoff scenarios. You've got some lines that didn't open until later in the week once we got a better idea of who was actually playing and who wasn't. So, again, this week, very, very tough. You got to be on top of the news. on top of paying attention to things. And of course, with this falling during the Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa holidays, and of course, Festivus, if you celebrate that, it's difficult to pay attention to all that news, stay on top of everything. So a lot of playing catch up for a lot of people out there this week, because they probably, like me, didn't really look at the NFL card from Monday until Thursday, just with everything else going on, trying to navigate the bowl games, stuff like that. So I really took my first look at the NFL card in depth today, trying to catch up on all the news, seeing who was practicing, seeing who wasn't, all that kind of thing. So again, this last week here in the NFL, very, very challenging. And of course, we're talking about substantial sums of money. The difference between a half point and a full point will be huge. The difference between a half point and 0 points will be huge across all the contests, the Westgate, the Circa, and of course the Gold Nugget Ultimate Football Challenge as well. So again, very important here to catch up on all the news that you possibly can and try to figure out what's going to happen with this week in the NFL. So I've got 4 very likely picks for you and a couple of leans for this Friday edition of the show, the last week, the last Super Contest segment. Unless I decide to do a recap. I did that last year because I couldn't find a guest for Friday's show. So that may be the case next week. We'll see if I wind up doing that. But obviously heading on into the playoffs, should have plenty to talk about in the NFL. In any event, again, the 4 very likely picks for me and a couple of leans. We start with number 9, the Atlanta Falcons. They are a pick'em taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, this is a pretty interesting game, a pretty interesting spot, I think, for both of these teams. Atlanta on the road with the short price, the market currently +1 painted across the board as I'm looking here, as I'm recording on Thursday evening. But the thing here for me with the Falcons is this. They're still playing hard. They've been playing hard for Dan Quinn. I presume that this is it for Dan Quinn. This will probably be his last game as the head coach. And judging by what we've seen since the bye week here for Atlanta, we should get a big effort in this game. They've kind of rallied around Quinn. Arthur Blank kind of said, we're going to finish out the season and then sort of reevaluate things. But this is a team that we thought, going into that bye, it was a good opportunity to fire Dan Quinn. And they didn't do it. The players responded. Nice win off the bye over the Saints. Couple of wins in a row here, including that road win at San Francisco. So they're still playing very, very hard. With Tampa Bay here this week, they know it's Bruce Arians. They know it's going to be the same coaching staff next year. And it certainly seems like, despite how things have finished up here for Jameis Winston, he'll get another crack for the Buccaneers next year, with the lack of turmoil and turnover that we had this past offseason for Tampa Bay. So I think for Atlanta, there's a little bit more on the line here this week. I think from the looks of it, Tampa Bay is going to stay fairly status quo. And they, of course, have a ton of injuries at the skill positions here going into this weekend. Jameis Winston is a turnover machine when everybody's healthy. Obviously, when guys aren't healthy, that certainly increases the opportunity for some more interceptions here. Dirk Koetter, the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, hoping for a little bit of revenge against his former employer. The Falcons with 13 takeaways here in their last 6 games. A big reason why they've kind of had a little bit of a late season resurgence. And obviously, as we know, with a guy like Jameis Winston, takeaway is certainly a possibility for the opposing defense. So I do like that for Atlanta here in this spot. Julio Jones needs 188 yards for 1,500 on the season. That's something I would expect them to try and get. I know Jones kind of banged up a little bit in practice this week, but with some of the injuries that the Falcons have had here late in the year, they've been feeding Julio Jones a ton. Target rate up over 40%, I believe, the last 2 or 3 weeks. That should be the case here once again. They're going to try to get him the football a lot, and he will make plays, and he has been making plays for them. So that Matt Ryan, Julio Jones connection should be in full swing. Feed him early, feed him often. The Bucs have a good run defense, but a below average pass defense. Atlanta doesn't run the football a whole lot. They want to throw it. Matt Ryan leads the NFL in completions this season, and he's missed a game. 2 games, really, a game and a half, really. So there's also that here for the Falcons, that they're going to throw the football. They're going to try to put some points up on the board. Should get an extra possession or 2 against a subpar pass defense. Give me the Falcons here, a pick'em on the road at Tampa Bay, number 9 in the Westgate SuperContest rotation order. Next up on the board for me here is number 16, The New York Giants, they are plus 4.5, hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. The Giants are still playing hard. They're finishing this thing out with a good amount of effort here. And last week, I went against the Giants. I kind of thought, okay, they had that big rally for Eli game at home against Miami. Daniel Jones coming back into the fray. Maybe they're not going to show up here. Maybe this will be a spot where they kind of mail this one in a little bit. They didn't play well defensively, but they played very well offensively and moved the football up and down. And these are important games. These are important reps for Daniel Jones. And I think the players are aware of that. I think the players understand that, this is our guy in the future. It's no longer Eli. The torch has been passed. These are important reps for Daniel Jones going into his first full offseason as an NFL quarterback. So I think the team trying to finish on a high note, and they get a pretty bad Philadelphia secondary here with which to try and put up some points and try to put up a little bit of a showcase game here at the end. The Eagles, give them credit. They really rallied. I should have played the Eagles last week in the SuperContest. I don't know why I didn't. This is a team that's really played well in the face of a lot of adversity, in the face of a lot of injuries here, but they put a lot into that game last week. They rallied, they stepped up, they did what they had to do. And I understand they are clearly the more motivated team here. If they win, they're in. They win the division and they go on to the NFL playoffs. They are clearly more motivated than the Giants. So I'm not really worried about their effort and their focus level. I'm just wondering if they can get up again to that degree. Because this line at 4.5, they need to win by a little bit of margin here. Zach Ertz missing practice again on Thursday. They're already destroyed by skill position injuries. You lose a guy like Ertz, a big-time mismatch against linebackers and safeties. That would be a big loss for them. All the pressure on Philadelphia here in this situation. The Giants can just go out there and play. They can just go out there and go through their reps on offense against a bad secondary. I don't think the Eagles get enough stops to cover this number. I do think the Eagles probably end up winning the game, but it should be a pretty close one here where I do think the Giants are invested. I do think they follow the lead of Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones, obviously a clear upgrade to Eli Manning. The stats bore that out. What we've seen with the body of work from Eli bores that out. Yeah, I think the Giants are just in a good spot here against an Eagles defense that isn't great, against an Eagles team that just wants to win and get out, an Eagles team that's going to have difficulty creating margin with all of those skill position injuries. So it's the Giants for me, number 16 in the SuperContest rotation order, plus 4.5 here in week 17. Next up on the card, number 18, the Baltimore Ravens. They're plus 2 at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I understand that Baltimore's playing a lot of backups here in this game, but this is a massive opportunity for RG3. It's a massive opportunity for a lot of guys that don't get a lot of reps for this team. And I think that it's really nice that the Ravens don't have to change their offense much at all. They've got a mobile quarterback now, and RG3 is not the downfield threat passing that Lamar Jackson is, but they don't have to change a whole lot about this offense. And again, opportunities for backups to shine. Get some free agent money. Get some looks. Maybe fill in for some of the guys that depart in free agency for Baltimore, because we see this all the time. All the time. These teams that have playoff success, guys go and get overpaid out there in the free agent market. So for the backups for the Ravens, they may be elevated to starting roles next year. So this is a really big opportunity for them. Yeah, obviously you're downgrading from Lamar Jackson, from some of the other guys that are out there, downgrading from Mark Ingram, stuff like that. But these are guys that are highly motivated. These are guys that are going to go out there and play. And John Harbaugh, one of the best coaches in the NFL, he'll have the second unit ready. He'll be able to motivate these guys and mobilize them to go out there and play well. And much like the situation for the Eagles here, all the pressure in the world is on the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have to win this game. They have to win this game on the road against Baltimore with Duck Hodges, who has not played well at all whatsoever. And something else I think is worth keeping in mind here with these teams that are going to get the bye weeks for the playoffs. Obviously, you've got some of these bye weeks kind of up for grabs still, but the Ravens don't want to let complacency set in. They want to stay sharp. Whichever starters are out there on either side of the ball, they're not going to mail this game in. They're going to try to stay sharp. They're going to work on things. They're going to get their reps in. And they're going to be invested in this game because they don't play next week. And you're going to be playing, a team that's been playing playoff football for several weeks in a row after that bye. So they don't want to get complacent. So I like the Ravens here. Plus the 2, number 18 in the SuperContest rotation order. A little bit of a fade of the Steelers, but I guess it's a good opportunity to buy Baltimore because I don't think they punt this game. I really don't. I don't think Harbaugh allows that to happen. Not with how well they've been playing, not with how much momentum they've got going into the playoffs. And, again, these are all coach speak types of things, but those guys are going to be ready because this is an opportunity for them. So give me the Ravens here, plus 2, number 18 in the SuperContest rotation order. The last of my very likely picks here, I would say this one is the weakest of the bunch, but I still think it's probably going to wind up on the card here. The Green Bay Packers, number 23 in the SuperContest rotation order. They are minus 12.5 on the road at the Detroit Lions. And I understand this is a very, very big number. The Packers do have something to play for here. The Lions do not. I understand this is a very big number. But I think the Lions are done. I think that they just want this season to be over. Matt Stafford's been out for a long time. The defense kind of rebelled a little bit when Quandre Diggs got traded. I think they just want this thing to be over with. They can't play spoiler. The Packers are already in anyway. They're just kind of playing for a bye and, some of the other perks that go along with getting a top seed in the playoffs. So Detroit really has nothing to play for here. I mean, guys like David Blau do, but that's about it, and this is a team that's lost a bunch of games in a row, hasn't been super competitive in some of those games. They're tied for the highest adjusted net yards per pass attempt allowed. So Aaron Rodgers should be able to have a big game here in this one. And also, too, you talk about teams and how, invested they are, how motivated they'll be for the full 60 in these games. Well, the Packers, as we know, and as I've talked about a lot this season, their best quarter is the first quarter. 15 offensive touchdowns in the first quarter for them. Highest yards per play of any quarter for them. After the first quarter, 8 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns through the other quarters. So this is a Green Bay team that can get out in front. And if you're talking about a team that you think may end up quitting in this week 17 game, they're probably going to quit if they get behind early. So Green Bay, with their scripted plays, with their preparations, they should be able to put a little bit of distance in this game in the first quarter. So I think with that in mind, that gives them the opportunity to go ahead and blow this one out. The Lions, I don't think that they show a whole lot of heart in this one. 10 giveaways the last 5 games. Only 6 takeaways in the last 10 games for the Lions. So I think the Packers, it's an uncomfortable road number. I will completely grant you that. Again, they don't have to go balls to the wall here. But I think just by going through their regular motions, they could put some distance and some margin in this game. So the Packers, minus 12.5, number 23 in the SuperContest rotation order, also on my list here of very likely picks. So as of Thursday evening here, my very likely picks are the Falcons as a pick'em, the Giants plus 4.5, the Ravens plus 2, and laying the big road price with the Packers minus the 12.5. Couple of leans for you here. And again, I think my 5th play does come from these 2 games, but obviously still surveying the NFL card, looking at the injuries, practice reports, so on and so forth. Number 25, the Kansas City Chiefs here, minus 8.5 as they take on the Los Angeles Chargers. Kansas City is really rounding into form here going into the playoffs. They'll want to stay sharp because New England plays Miami in the spot to get that other bye. They're probably going to get that. So Kansas City probably going to have to play next week. They're playing very well offensively. They're playing very well defensively. They won't take any unnecessary risks here. And, of course, we could see Matt Moore in the second half of this game. But, Matt Moore played well earlier this season in the absence of Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not too worried about that. The Chargers have nothing left to play for. And even though Phillip Rivers, this is probably the swan song for him, doesn't really seem like the team is rallying too much around Phillip Rivers. He's banged up anyway. And the Chargers have been a much better road team than home team so far this season. They have no home field advantage. It's kind of a bummer for them, kind of a downer, really, to play at home. But I just don't think that they're going to be too invested in this game. A lot of injuries, again, over the course of the season for them. A lot of what could have been with some of the close games that they lost late. I just don't know if we get a big effort from the Chargers here. And the Chiefs, even if we don't get a substantial effort from them, very deep team, good depth at quarterback, good depth on defense. Those guys are going to play. Those guys are going to show up and try to maximize their opportunities. So the Chiefs minus 8.5, the one I'm leaning towards the most here of my set of leans to be that fifth pick for me in week 17 in the Super Contest. Finally, number 30, the Seattle Seahawks is the only game on the board where it really, truly matters to both teams. They're plus 3.5 here. Again, the 49ers still look gassed on defense. One extra day to prep for this one off of the Saturday game last week. But they really had to scratch and claw to get that game against the Rams. Maybe had a chance at a cover, but the guy made the catch and fell down, Emmanuel Sanders. But still, they really had to give a lot of effort there last week. And again, they had that week 4 bye. So there is great incentive for San Francisco to win this game and get that bye, but it's a big number for Seattle at home. You look at them and they haven't been a home dog too often here in recent times, but they have covered their last 4 as a home dog dating back to week 13 of 2017. And I understand this isn't the same Seahawks team, but I think with the hook, this one's a little bit too big. What concerns me here is that the Seattle injury report is quite substantial. They lost some guys last week, maybe not going to get those guys back here this week, in particular on the defensive side of the ball. So that concerns me some for Seattle here. And one of the reasons why I would probably look more towards the Chiefs than I would towards the Seahawks. But again, that hook, very, very enticing on the Seattle side here. We'll see what that injury report looks like on Friday. But, for right now, I do think my Super Contest card very likely to be the Falcons, Giants, Ravens, Packers, and Chiefs, but the Seahawks are also in contention here for week 17 as I hope to finish on a high note. And thanks to everybody for following along here with our Super Contest progress. Certainly hoping for better results as we head on into next season, but it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed breaking down the games. Hopefully you've gotten some food for thought here on these segments. And thank you once again, of course, to Bang the Book for the opportunity to be in the Super Contest as well as the Circa Million.